There's one thing I hate about dieting, and that's eating bland foods all the time. Just boring chicken, rice, and vegetables. This Thai green curry recipe is going to be packed with flavor, protein. It's lower in calories than a traditional recipe, and it is absolutely amazing. It does not feel like you're eating a healthier version of this dish. With a little bit of time and effort, you can be eating something that's going to be amazing every single day and still fit your diet needs. I urge you to give this a shot. If you follow this recipe, you're getting 30 servings of curry with almost 55 grams of protein and less than 350 calories, all for only $2.76 per serving. First thing we're going to grab is 15 pounds of chicken breast, followed by 5.5 pounds of frozen vegetables. You can use any kind of vegetables you prefer. Next up, we're grabbing 48 ounces of non-fat plain Greek yogurt, 4 large yellow or white onions, 1 bunch of Thai basil, 2 cans of coconut milk, 5 tablespoons of this garlic ginger paste, or 5 cloves of garlic and about a 2-inch knob of ginger. Next up, we're grabbing 3 tablespoons of coconut oil, 1 14-ounce container of May Ploy green curry paste. This is the best brand for curry paste, trust me. 2 cans of bamboo shoots, 5 to 6 good-sized kaffir lime leaves. These will add a ton of flavor. 1/3 cup of lime juice or the juice of 3 limes. 1 to 2 teaspoons of fish sauce. About 1/3 cup of a sweetener of your choice. I'm going with Swerve brown sugar replacement. And 1/3 cup or to taste of chicken bouillon in place of salt. Okay, feel free to pause it right here. This is how you're going to split this recipe into 1/3. If you're not working with such a large pot as I am, just go ahead and use this amount. This is a more reasonable amount for any kind of standard size stock pot. And you'll end up with roughly the same amount of calories and macros. First step, you're going to want to go ahead and thaw out those frozen vegetables. Next up, set your oven to 420 degrees Fahrenheit. Here, we're just going to go ahead with 1 tablespoon of coconut oil onto this baking dish. Or maybe a brush, be better. And we'll just go in with all that chicken. We're just gonna squeeze out a portion of this green curry paste. Maybe about 1/3 of the bag. Just set that aside. A little bit of black pepper. And just try to get it as flat as you can. And we're just going to toss this into the oven. Set that timer for 20 minutes. Right now we're just going to prepare our onions by slicing them thin. Luckily I have this food processor that'll help me with that process. Go ahead and turn on your stovetop to medium heat. And here we're just going to add 2 tablespoons of coconut oil to our pot. Go ahead and toss in all of your sliced onions with a dash of sea salt and just give that a good little stir and let it sit and saute for a while. Now, while our onions are sauteing and our chicken is cooking, we can go ahead and chop up these frozen veggies. All right, this is about 15 minutes into the onions. Definitely want to let these sweat a little bit more, get a little bit more color on them just to let the flavors develop and let the sugar molecules inside of the onion really come to life. All right, now this is the chicken after 20 minutes in the oven. It doesn't look all that appetizing right now, but we just want to make sure we get that green curry paste flavor all up in the chicken and get it cooked enough. It doesn't have to be fully cooked at this point, because what we're going to do next is chop this up into little bite-sized pieces and toss it in with the curry and let that simmer. So it'll finish cooking overall at the end. So now we're just going to let this sit, cool down enough to where it's cool enough to chop up into little tiny cubes. All right, checking back in now. We're about 20 minutes in to these onions, and they are looking pretty good. Want to get a little bit more color on them still, but these are just about done. Then we can move on to the next portion. All right, now that we've got a decent amount of color and our onions are starting to stick to the bottom of this pan, we're just going to go ahead and go in with all of that garlic ginger paste. Mix that in and let that get fragrant with the onions. And at this point, we're actually going to add in the rest of our green curry paste. I'm just going to let this get nice and fragrant. I'm going to toast all of this. Let's go ahead and let this toast for a few minutes. Still keeping it on that medium heat. We don't really want to scorch this. Just getting it nice and warmed up so that it's fragrant before adding any of the liquids. All right, now it's been about 5 or 6 minutes. We can go ahead and pull this off, turn off the stove. Let that sit, and we're going to move on over to our food processor. All right, so now all we're going to do is take all this onion mixture and just carefully put it into our food processor. Yeah, that smells amazing. Try to scrape up as much as you can in here. And now all we're gonna do is go ahead and blend this mixture while we slowly pour in some of that coconut milk. It'll create a nice, smooth, creamy consistency here. And the pureed onions are really gonna help thicken that sauce without too much addition of coconut milk or any kind of added fats. All right, now that it's all pureed up here, we can go ahead and add this back into our pot. All right. And with that mixture, and we can also go ahead and rinse this out with water. Since we're going to be adding water later on as well, just rinse this with water to get all the rest of that in there, or you can just use a spatula to clean it out. And give that a little stir, and we can go ahead and turn that heat back on. We'll just keep it at a low. Anywhere from low to, medium low. I would say we really just don't want to burn the bottom of this pan since it is going to be very high volume. We just want to make sure it all heats up slowly. And now at this point we can go in with all of our Greek yogurt. Now mine looks a little weird because I had it at the back of the fridge and it ended up freezing, but it's still perfectly fine. It'll mix in perfectly fine once we've got it all blended in well and heated up. Now, if for whatever reason you have the same issue that I did with the Greek yogurt, you can go ahead and whisk it. It'll just kind of break it up in here and become a little bit more, develop a little better consistency. We can add in that second can of coconut milk at this point. Get that in all nice and creamy. Now is actually a great time to add in your sweetener if you prefer a sweeter kind of Thai curry. I do. I like a little sweetness. This isn't going to make it taste sweet, really. It's going to add a little subtle sweetness. And we're going to toss in those kaffir lime leaves as well. We're going to actually take these out at the end. They typically end up floating to the top, so they are decently easy to remove from the dish. However, now is actually a perfect time to add a little bit of fish sauce to this dish. Just go in with a light splash, just like that. I'd say it's probably about a teaspoon, I would say, maybe 2 teaspoons. It is optional though, you don't have to add fish sauce. If it's something that you really don't like, then I'm gonna skip that. I just find it adds a little bit more depth of flavor to this dish. So I personally love it, but if you don't, that's okay. And now once you've got all of those in there, you can just toss in your veggies and let those soften up and cook. Also add a little bit of moisture to this. Now might be a good time to grab a bigger stirring spoon. And make sure those are all in there nicely, all submerged in that sauce, that curry. And now we're just gonna go ahead and let this simmer on low to medium low. I'm just gonna go ahead and do low because I've got time today to let this chill. You can even pop the lid on if you want now, which I'm actually gonna do just to help it kind of build up a little bit more temperature quicker. And we're just gonna let that sit for, you know, maybe about 10 to 20 minutes. Okay, so now at this point, we're just gonna go ahead and take our chicken breast and cut it up into bite-sized pieces. I like little diced pieces of chicken for this dish. It's cool enough to touch now, so we're all good to go. And don't worry if it's a little bit raw there. It's gonna finish up cooking in that curry and absorb all that curry flavor, and it'll tenderize it as well. You're not gonna really get any dry chicken breast. And we're just gonna plop it right back into this baking dish as well, because we're gonna use all of those juices and pour them into the sauce. We're gonna keep all that flavor. All right. 15 pounds of chicken breast diced up, finally. Great. All right, now after you've just spent all that time dicing up your chicken, we can go ahead and check back in on this curry. All right, you got a nice little simmer going now actually, which is great. Now at this point, we can just add in our bamboo shoots, liquid and all. And now, while bamboo shoots are optional and you don't have to put them in, especially if you want to save a couple bucks or you don't really like them, I love them. They just absorb the flavor of that curry, and when you bite into them, it just releases all that curry flavor in your mouth. So we're just gonna let those soak up all the flavor, and now we can actually start adding all of our chicken into this and then mix it in so it doesn't become overwhelming. Just kind of mix that in. So we are adding quite a bit of chicken. It's going to be very, very protein rich. You know what? I'm going to bust out the big guns for this. All right, here we go. Oof. Now we're getting an arm workout here. Let's go. And incorporate arms into your meal prep day. And just so we're not leaving any flavor on the table here, we're just gonna add the rest of that cooked chicken juice with all that curry flavor still in it. And let's go again with another arm workout here. We might have to double fist this. Now, just gonna kind of try to keep everything level here and submerge it. Pop the lid back on, let it simmer on low. Don't let the bottom burn. So check in every 15-20 minutes or so while you're doing something else, you know, your laundry, vacuuming, whatever else you've got to do around the house. Let this just sit and let all the flavors develop. Let the chicken cook in there. And we're going to check back on this, you know, every 15-20 minutes or so for probably the next hour or two, actually. So all the work is pretty much done at this point. So we're just going to let this sit. All right, now we're checking in on it after 15 minutes. Hear a little bit of gurgling there at the bottom, which is good. That means it's starting to simmer a bit and warm up. Kind of want to stir up that bottom. Just make sure nothing's sticking and burning there at the bottom, since we are working with such high volume. Pop the top back on and let it sit another 15-20 minutes. All right, another 20 minutes later, check on this again. Just making sure we're keeping this stirred, not letting the bottom burn. That's it, just be patient. All right, lid back on, another 20 minutes. All right. It's another 20 minutes. Let's give that a look. Ooh. It's simmering a good amount now. All right, now that it's been simmering for a good while now, I'm pretty positive that the chicken is cooked all the way through. I think it's been about close to an hour now at this point, maybe 45-50 minutes, but it started to simmer a decent amount. So we're gonna go ahead and taste this, and we're gonna see if we need to add anything at this point before we throw in our finishing touches of lime juice and basil. Just at this point, since it's all cooked, let's give this a little taste and see if it needs any more, you know, sweetener, maybe a little more salt. We'll just see what we need. All right, it's pretty good to me. I do think that it needs a little bit of salt. So instead of salt at this point, I'm actually going to go ahead and drop in some of this chicken bouillon. It's pretty nice seasoning. It's almost like you're adding a chicken broth. And it's also actually going to help thicken this a little bit. I think there's a little bit of cornstarch in this. So I'm just going to add about 3 tablespoons here. Mix it in, let it simmer a little while longer, and then taste it again. Actually, I'm going to try it out right now. See. Yeah, it's pretty nice. You know, I may actually end up adding a little bit more of that brown sugar replacement, that sweetener. Just gonna go in with a couple more tablespoons of that. Just get that all mixed in there. One more taste. It seems pretty good to me. Seems just about perfect, actually. So I'm just gonna finish it off with that lime juice. And we're gonna dump some basil into this. And those are last finishing touches there. And we're just gonna let this simmer a little bit longer and let all those flavors come together. Now the important thing here is that we're using the basil at the end. I also find using the lime juice at the end helps too. Helps to maintain that brightness and acidity versus adding it earlier on. It seems to kind of cook off a bit. And with fresh herbs, you always want to kind of add them towards the end of the cooking process. If you're using dried herbs like dried basil, I'd recommend putting them in at the beginning, kind of when we added the kaffir lime leaves. Actually, that'll give it time to kind of rehydrate and release its flavor into the dish. Whereas with the fresh basil, it's a little delicate, and we don't want to kind of cook that off. Just pop that top back on, and let it simmer just a little bit longer. Make sure everything's pasteurized, fully cooked. Any kind of bad bacteria that may be in there cooks off, and then it'll store really well. All right, we'll check back in about 20 minutes. Right, another 20 minutes later. That is some good simmering. And just one more time, we're gonna taste it again. Yeah, that is really good now. That is pretty much good to go. I'm gonna let this cool down a bit naturally, turn off the heat, and just let it cool down a bit so that we can end up pouring it into our bowls later. All right, now that it's decently cooled down, it's still pretty hot, but it's cool enough to kind of work with now. We can start taking out those lime leaves that I mentioned earlier, usually float to the top here. If we can't get them all out right now, then we can get them out when we start pouring it into our containers. They'll definitely pop up. Get this ready for our meal prep. All right, now I'm just gonna go ahead and pour these into 3 separate, really large Tupperware containers. And this is actually the hard part, is getting it all into here cleanly, so bear with me. All right, there goes another lime leaf. So what I like to do is I like to freeze my portions that I'm not going to use in 1 week, and leave 1 container out, which I'll use over the course of a whole week. And this will stay perfect throughout the whole week. It's got enough salt, and it's been cooked well enough, and it's really saucy. It's not going to develop that kind of old refrigerated poultry taste. This is going to keep very well, and actually the flavors will end up developing a little bit more overnight, at least, over a day or 2. But it will stay really good for the entire week. And then the frozen portions, all you'd have to do is defrost them over the weekend or whenever, and get them ready for that following week, and just make some new rice, pour it over the rice, and you're set. You have meals ready to go. We're gonna let them cool down a bit, come down to room temperature, refrigerate them, and then freeze them. I don't toss them into the freezer while they're hot. So just bring them down slowly and then freeze them. All right, so I'm just gonna be making 1 serving's worth here in Tupperware to show you kind of what to expect. My portions are double the size, of course, because I work a lot of hours and I need something that's gonna sustain me throughout that entire shift. So for 1 serving, I would go with about a cup of some nice jasmine rice. I like to cook my jasmine rice in a little bit of coconut oil. Just enhances the flavor a bit, and adds actually to the resistant starches the next day after you cool down the rice. You're actually getting less calories from the rice because. All right, so now we've got about a cup of cooked jasmine rice here, and then we're just gonna go in with a few scoops of this delicious Thai green curry, just full of chicken and protein and vegetables. It is so delicious. Plenty of sauce to really soak into that rice as well. And the sauce is actually very protein rich because of all that Greek yogurt that we added. I love it. All right, now let's give this a taste. Get some rice in there with some of that curry. Oh my God. That is so good. This really doesn't even taste like a healthier version of this, but this is loaded with protein, and we've cut the fat way down by using Greek yogurt and just a little bit of coconut milk. This is absolutely incredible. You're getting so much flavor. That green curry is coming through so well, and that herbaceousness from the basil. You have to give this a try. Now, it's got plenty of spice in it, but if you wanted to bump it up a little bit or add even more flavor on top, a little bit of sriracha over the top of this goes really well. But I think this is perfect just the way it is. You let me know how you like it. If you're looking for more high protein meal prep recipes on a budget, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Please leave a comment if you tried this recipe and let me know how you liked it. Also, check out some of my other videos for more ideas just like this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.